Okay, I know. You probably clicked on this video because of the title or the thumbnail. And before anything else, let me just put this out there. This is not a hate video on Kinich. It's not some rage bait piece designed to start a war below in the comment section. That's not what this video is all about. In fact, full transparency, I actually love Kinich. No, seriously, here, let me show you. I've got him at level 90, and I even crowned 2 of his talents because I enjoy playing him so much. I'm basically a certified Kinich main. And yeah, I'll even show you my embarrassing scuffed build. Don't judge the crit ratio too hard, alright? My artifact luck and RNG are equally shit and it doesn't ever get lucky for me. It happens to the best of us. So Kinich mains and fans out there, please, don't go after me. But with that said, loving a character doesn't mean that I can't talk about how underwhelming their overall execution might feel, especially when it comes to their story presence, development, complexities of emotions and depth, and the way they're integrated into the world of Teyvat. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why Kinich feels like a boring character, or rather, why he ended up being boring in my opinion, despite having a ton of potential. And honestly, I think Hoyoverse did him kinda dirty, both in terms of how he was written and presented, especially in the context of Natlan's Archon Quest line, and in terms of his individuality in comparison with other Natlan characters. Now, to be clear, when I talk about good character writing, especially in a lore-heavy and story-driven game like Genshin Impact, I can't do a MatPat impression. I'm usually looking for a couple of key things that makes a character feel relatable, complete, and interesting in general. Number 1, narrative presence, which is basically how essential a character feels to the bigger story they're part of. This is something that Hoyoverse does pretty well in my observation. I mean, think about it. Every time we arrive at a new nation, there's usually that one character who just so happens to be in the right place at the right time. They become our first point of contact, our guide, and more importantly, a character who grounds us into that region's story. Like in Fontaine, when we stumble upon Lynette by accident the moment we arrive. She's staring off into the sea, shrouded in mystery thinking about the water levels rising. And that chance encounter is what kicked off the Archon Quest. And it's not like she just disappears after that, she's there along with the gang. From the Opera Epiclese to the Fortress of Meripede. Heck, even in character drip trailers she's present. And all the way to the finale when Nervalet had his Hydro Dragon Sovereign powers restored. We see her, we interact with her, and her presence is consistently woven into the storyline for Fontaine. Same with Sumeru. Okay, yeah, we basically smoked divine weed, thank you Hypatia, and passed out in the forest, but then we're rescued by Collei and Tignari, who once again happen to be in the right place at the right time. They stick around, they're relevant, you feel like they're a part of your journey, not just people the plot throws at you for one act and then completely fizzle out of existence at the final end of the Archon Quest. My point is, there's a rhythm to their involvement. They react to the same revelations we do. They push the plot forward in small and big ways, whether they're physically with the traveler or influencing things from behind the scenes. You still feel their presence, like they're moving alongside us as the story unfolds. Number 2, character consistency and growth. And this one's big. We're talking about how a character changes, struggles, or evolves in a meaningful way over the course of the story. And honestly, that's usually one of Genshin's strong suits. Like, say what you want about the pacing, I'm looking at you Inazuma, but damn can Hoyo write some banger character arcs that make you feel things, man. Think about how many characters we've met at the start of an Archon Quest, or even during the middle, who are nothing like they are by the end. They grow and confront their faults and imperfections. That's what makes them interesting. Take Xiao, for instance. He's a cold, distant, silly little guy. Stay away from me or I'll break your kneecaps, goofy fella. And then slowly, over time, we see glimpses of his vulnerability, guilt, and a desire for connection despite his curse of having karmic debt. And this spans from the Liyue Archon Quest to his story quest and even his involvement in the Chasm. Or A, who goes from this hyper-isolated Archon obsessed with eternity to someone learning how to re-engage with the world around her and living in it. We get to see her change her views on what eternity means to her, and how she gets comfortable with opening up to us about the past, and the loss she had to face when Makoto passed away. But Elixific, all of these characters have pretty depressing backstories. And look, I'm not saying that every character needs to have a tragic backstory or some earth-shattering revelation for them to experience, but if a character's personality remains static from beginning to end with no visible growth or dealing with conflict, it's hard to feel like they've gone through anything. And that's exactly why A's 2 story quest serves more justice in her disposition as compared to the main Archon quest. And finally, we've got relationships and dynamics, which for me is one of the most important aspects of character writing. Like, how does this character bounce off of the others? What kind of chemistry do they bring to the table? Do their interactions usually do something like reveal a deeper part of themselves or the people around them? And most importantly, do they leave a long-lasting impression? And also, here's the thing as well, even if a character isn't front and center in the plot, strong dynamics can carry them. They can make them memorable. Let's go to Mondstadt. Take Kaya and Diluc's dynamic for example. The relationship is narratively dense. There's things like unresolved grief, brotherhood, and you can tell that there's a lot of things left unsaid between the both of them whenever they interact on screen. It's world building through relational storytelling. Even though Diluc and Kaya barely have moments in the Mondstadt Archon Quest, or even in Kaya's or Diluc's story quests and their participation in limited time events, their history feels alive in the background of every interaction when you come across the both of them. With Kaya's sarcasm and teasing, and Diluc's stoicism becomes more than just a personality trait. The dynamic adds layers to both characters. So now that I have explained what aspects should be present in a character for it to be successful, let me take you on a deep dive into Kinich's character writing. I'll be splitting this video into 3 parts. Number 1 would be his role in the Natlan Archon Quest. Number 2 is his role in the Natlan Tribal Chronicles. And number 3 is comparing Kinich's personality with someone who executed it perfectly. Just a heads up, this video will include spoilers for both the Archon Quest and the Natlan Tribal Chronicles, so if you're not caught up, why are you even watching this video? I'm kidding, but seriously, feel free to watch at your own pace. Just know that I'll be diving into some major plot points, so you've been warned, essentially. Also, if you do want to share your thoughts below, like your takes, whether you agree or disagree with my statements, feel free to do so. I encourage everyone to place their 2 cents. However, may I remind everybody that we should at least do it in a very civilized, friendly manner. There's no need to bicker and fight amongst each other, guys, come on. Now, let's talk about him in the Archon Quest. Fast forward after Kachina introduces us to her tribe, the Children of Echoes, we finally arrive at the Stadium of the Sacred Flame. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, we got to meet Ben 10, 2D pixel art, and the Archon of Serotonin. The iconic Natlan trio has officially been introduced to us. Okay, so wow, first impressions of him. Let's not lie to ourselves, his eyes are gorgeous. Like, this might be one of the best eye designs I've ever seen in this game. Like, actually stunning. Who did his character design? I got to fly to China and give them a smooch cause he looks like a pretty asparagus. From the headband, to the gloves, to the way his outfit flows, it's detailed, elegant, and just really nice to look at. Now, I will admit, there's something slightly off in terms about how his design fits into the overall style of Genshin. The 8-bit patterns that he possesses kinda looks like he escaped from a different video game entirely, but honestly, I don't really mind that much. It's still pretty cool regardless. Okay, I might be a little biased here because green is my favorite color. So anytime I see a Dendro character, I'm like, yes, you, I like you. And Kinich definitely fits that aesthetic. Introverted, calculated, and I honestly thought that he might be a little bit of an emo boy from the start. I genuinely believe that he could be Xiao's brother or something. But yeah, visuals, 10 out of 10, no complaints here. Also, quick thing, I love Ahau. I know a lot of people don't like him because of how annoying he is, but geez, not only is he the polar opposite of Kinich in every single perspective, he's also the perfect character to spar with Kinich in terms of showcasing his potential dynamics. And plus, I never get tired of hearing Ahau refer to himself as
the Almighty Dragon Lord, Ahau!
Now that I've been introduced to Molani, Kinich, and Kachina in full, I had really high hopes for Kinich's character arc. Genuinely. Out of the 3 main figures in the first half of the Natlan narrative, he was the one who stood out to me the most. His quiet presence, his cold pragmatism, that calculating yet unshakable demeanor, it all felt like there was something bubbling under the surface. He was closed doors from the very beginning, and it intrigued me. He's nothing like Xiao. He's not an emo boy who doesn't want to get along with anyone. He's different in a sense that he has no problem with having friends or dealing with people. He's just a very straight to the point kind of guy. No skedaddling lines whatsoever. And don't get me wrong, I still love Kachina and Moalani, but compared to Kinich, the development felt a bit more linear. You could tell where the arcs were heading. The classic emotional growth under pressure kind of path, or something bad happened and they have to toughen up in order to get through it. You get me, right? It's really easy to predict when they are going to change, like when Kachina finally became confident and proud of herself when she was declared the victor of the pilgrimage, or when Moalani had to toughen herself up when she found out that Ateo was going to pass away. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just familiar. You can tell when and how their character development will change. Kinich, though, had the potential to go in a completely different direction. He's emotionally distant, reserved, and prefers to observe rather than to act impulsively. That's already a unique trait that he possesses, much like Alhaitham. He's not loud or emotionally expressive, but the stoicism, the trauma from the past, and the way he quietly supports others despite his own issues, that's rich ground for introspection and complexity. Right after we wrap things up with Moalani in the People of the Springs part of the Archon Quest, and I remember that before we even went there, Kinich actually said he'd give us a tour of the signs of the canopy whenever we decided to drop by. Having remembered that, I fully expected that the next bit would be visiting the signs of the canopy and hanging out with him, you know? But, well, I was so disappointed that never happened. Like, I really thought we were going to get a Kinich arc, the same way that Kachina and Moalani had. We already spent a decent chunk of time with Kachina and her tribe. We met Chief Pakal, got to know stuff about the Children of Echo's dance battles, the Wayob, and what they're known for in relation to other tribes, and with Moalani as well. We had a whole emotional arc during the People of the Springs, where we meet Chief Amina and Ateya. We even got to see the tribe fight off an abyss invasion, which was cool, by the way. So naturally I thought, okay, now it's Kinich's turn. But no. Instead, we just jump right into the next part of the Archon Quest, and Kinich gets left behind entirely. Yes, we do eventually get to visit the Signs of the Canopy, but it's during the Ancient Name Forging arc, which has nothing to do with Kinich. That whole section is carried by Shilonen, Sitlali, and Chaska, who are all great characters by the way, but it just made Kinich feel even more disconnected from his own tribe's spotlight, and that's what bothered me a lot while I was playing through the section of this quest. And I kept waiting, hoping for even just a little moment with him, like literally anything. A side scene, a flashback, a conversation, anything that would get him on screen and have his moment. Maybe talk about his world and his perspective the same way we did for the others. But it never came. Like we had more touching moments with Vichama, a literal NPC, than we did about Kinich. And I'm not even mad about Vichama because he's actually one of the goats, baby. That fucker made me cry so much during the end when they got reunited with Malko. But the fact that Vichama, who was written as a means to propel the plot forward in the Ancient Name arc, has a decent amount of screen time, and he left us with more of an emotional impression than Kinich. It feels unfair in my opinion. Again, I'm not hating on Vichama, I just wish that Kinich was present in this moment as well, with his own spotlight to grow or shine, or at the very least, be seen. And this is exactly why I find Kinich's entire character structure so weird. It honestly feels like he was just shoved to the side, like Hoyoverse didn't know what to do with him, or worse, didn't bother giving him the treatment he deserved. That's why it's such a letdown for me that his character never really goes anywhere. His personality remains steady from beginning to end, and that's fine. However, he doesn't get pushed to a breaking point or challenged in a way that forces him to confront his own guardedness or pragmatic sense of thinking about the cost of everything. There's no pivotal moment where we really see him, not just as the quiet cold Malipo, but as someone who's been through hell and still chooses to let the world speak for him. The emotional depth is there, but it stays buried. We never get to dig it. And the main storyline never demands that he changes or even reflects on himself in a meaningful way, like how Ororon thought about the purpose of his own existence, and examining if there truly is a hero, and if so, why does it have to be him? And that's the biggest opportunity. Kinich could have been a deeply compelling character precisely because of how closed off he is. Any moment where he's given a chance to be vulnerable makes it so huge, because it's so out of character for him to do so, but the writing never takes him there. Continuing the Archon Quest during the big Abyss invasion, everyone is scattered across the battlefield doing their own thing. You know, during the parts where we had to go on a hot air balloon and travel to the various tribes to help out our friends. And hey, don't get me wrong, Kinich was there swinging around and delivering the latest battle report and helping out the signs of the Canopy messengers. He was actively fighting, holding his own, and we even got to chat and fight alongside him amidst all the chaos that ensued. So at first, I thought, okay, finally, this could be it. Kinich can finally shine cause surely he can talk about something. Maybe him losing hope in the battle or breaking out of his cold personality into something who is scared of the abyss. But then, a giant black void ball called Gouse shows up. Classic abyss behavior. And do you know what Kinich says? He's going to investigate it and yeets out of our sight immediately. And that's the last we hear from him in quite a long time. Like he walked off towards the abyss's giant balls, bro. And the story continues on from that point onward. We continue to witness the horrors of the war, the casualties rising, the morale getting low. We see our friends slowly becoming anxious and fearing for the worst. We even had a moment with Koichi dying right in front of us. And I have to say, Chaska's character development here was pretty solid and on point. She finally obtained her ancient name here. Anyways, once Mawika used the Gnosis and rounded up all the ancient name-bearers, namely Shalonen, Moalani, Kinich, Ororon, Chaska, and Yansan, the Night Warden Wars was activated and the Ode of Resurrection was restored. It was during this period in the questline where we were in contact with almost everyone throughout the fight while we're battling off these Abyss Pillar thing. After dealing with those things, Mawika punched the living hell out of the Abyss's balls and revealed the fake sky. Alas, the war is over, boys. I'm going to stop with the Archon questline here because honestly, that's the last major plot point where Kinich is involved in. I know he's part of the whole activating power element in that one cutscene where we get to hold Mawika's awesome burning claymore, but aside from that, Kinich and the others weren't as spotlighted during the finale as it was focused more on Mawika and the Traveler. I'm not disregarding Kinich's contributions during the Abyss invasion, or his message to us in the Pilgrim's Chronicle. He did play a part in moving the narrative forward, and in that regard, he fulfilled his role. But the point I really want to drive home is this. It wasn't effective in bringing us any closer to him relationship-wise. Yes, he was present. Yes, he had lines, but did we actually connect with him? Did we learn more about who he is past the stoic surface? Not really. It just felt lackluster. The emotional bridge between us and Kinich never truly formed. Throughout the entire Natlan questline, Kinich's presence often felt like a flicker, as I've observed. Like we'd catch a glimpse of him in one scene, only for him to be like, I'm off to hunt the birds or something, and disappears again. You'd see him in one shot, quietly watching from the sidelines and tossing a howl towards the sun, and then poof! He do be gone. It's frustrating because he did a significant part in the Archon Quest, but when you compare his role to characters like Chaska, Ororon, Setlali, or even Mawika, it just doesn't feel like he left the same kind of impact. The kind of Genshin impact! Those characters had emotional beats, decisions, and visible growth. With Kinich, everything feels like it's happening off-screen. And to be fair, it does seem like he's working behind the scenes, and I actually don't mind that. That's in character for him, and it fits his personality to a T. But if he's doing things behind the scenes, we need to actually see those things in development. Even just a few scenes showing the weight he's carrying or the risk he's taking while we're distracted with other events, something to remind us that he's not just a background asset, but a determined character who has to see his task through till the very end. The execution of his character felt like he was included to be there, without really being present. And that's a shame, because like I said, there were so many potential moments where he could have given us something to remember him by. By the end of the Incandescent Ode of Resurrection questline, I realized that I still barely know Kinich, which is insane, considering how much we've learned about literally everyone else. They each had their heart-touching moments. They gave us insight into who they are, their values, fears, internal conflicts. Even side characters like Ahau, who's basically been yapping in our ears non-stop, somehow ended up feeling more fleshed out than Kinich. And that's honestly why I'm even making this video, because I've never really seen anyone talk about it. No one's pointing out how this supposedly major character got so little narrative intimacy. So this is me, deep diving into his character not to hate, but to ask, why did Kinich get sidelined like this? After wrapping things up, I'd for sure thought I'd walk away knowing more about him. His past, his likes, dislikes, his fears, what makes him tick. Anything to make him feel human, especially after seeing how well Mualani's or Citlali's story quest handled their complexities. It was emotional, personal, and full of development. Now, let's talk about the Signs of the Canopy Tribal Chronicles Quest. Here's the part of the video where I talk about Yapanki's Turnfire, which is the name of the tribal chronicle focused on the Signs of the Canopy. Allow me to go into a full plot recap here so that all of us are on the same page when I'm going to discuss Kinich's supposed role in this quest. So let me brush through a few key plot points before I go off yapping again. So the quest starts off with two kids, Huni and Toba, hanging around just outside the Signs of the Canopy. Apparently there's this mysterious guy named Uncle Sanka, who'll tell them he'd bring some people over to help them out. We don't really know who this Sanka dude is, but the kids seem to trust him a lot. The kids explain that some baby Saurians ran off after getting scared, and of course, being the main character that we are, we immediately volunteer to help. When we ask why Huni's dad isn't handling this, the kid explained that he's busy preparing for the Turnfire Night, a really important ceremony that involves the Mountain King. So off we go to track down the three Saurians. On our way to rescue the last one, we encounter the one and only Kahulahau at the top of the mountain for some reason? After some back and forth banter between the three of us, we find out that he's currently investigating an Abyss-related incident near Huitzilan. Apparently, the mother of the Saurians fell under the Abyss's influence when Berserk attacked the tribe and then leapt off of a cliff to end her own suffering. So yeah, that's how we start this quest. Real, cheerful stuff. Eventually, we bring the baby Saurians back to Huni, and then we get a flashback. This moment where the suspicious Outlander is listening to Natlan stories told by the kids. That's where the lore starts dropping and oh my god is it dripping wet. We learn a bunch about the Turnfire ceremony, including the detail as mentioned by Huni that Turnfire is different from normal fire. If you get set fire on it, you'll feel a horrible burning pain from behind you, but you won't die from it right away. Aside from that piece of info, we get to learn about the legend of Burkina and Konkomato, the two legendary warriors from the tribe who becomes a central plot point as we move along towards the Chronicle Quest. And that wraps up Act 1. Moving onto the Act 2 of the questline, we meet up with Trinidad, who turns out to be Huni's father. After a quick exchange of pleasantries, we learn a bit more about the cultural weight behind the Turnfire Night. He explains that it is a traditional ceremony celebrated by the Signs of the Canopy, meant to honor the ancestor Burkina and his legendary companion Kongomato, the Mountain King, the Goat, the giant lovable piece of green marshmallow. According to the tribe's lore, this duo once fought against the Abyss. It was a legendary battle, but of course it ended in tragedy. Burkina didn't make it, and Kongomato ended up contaminated with abyssal energy. He's been in hibernation ever since. And here's where it gets interesting. Trinidad mentions that Saurians aren't supposed to live this long, their lifespan isn't that extensive, which leads to the theory that Kongomato is still alive purely because of his own abyssal contamination. Hence, the Turnfire ceremony, it's done regularly to keep him asleep and contained, but with the recent abyss activity spiking, he's becoming unstable. And boy oh boy, this is the part where we come in. Trinidad tells us that we're going to become the flame bearer for this generation. Okay, let's take it back a notch, Trinidadi, because don't we already have Kinich for that? Isn't he supposed to be, you know, the flame guy? But no, Trinidad absolutely shits on him. Apparently Kinich asked what the price was for performing the ritual, like he was calculating some sort of commission fee, and Trinidad took that very personally. It doesn't help that Ahau, yes, the loud 2D megaphone one, just keeps yapping and making the whole thing worse. After that encounter, we cut to a POV switch of Kinich. He's already tracked down and captured the suspicious Outlander, Uncle Sanka. Remember that guy from earlier? So I thought, yes, here we go, Kinich's time to shine, and then they start yapping. Except he only gets 4 fucking lines. And yes, I counted 4 for the rest of this scene. It's just Ahau and Sanka bickering like an old married couple, while Kinich stands there like a decorative cactus, or one of Auroron's radishes. Bro is just vibing silently in the background of his own moment. We switch back to the traveler's perspective after that, and it's time for the first step of becoming the Flamebearer, lighting all the ceremonial braziers. We go full torch mode, light everything up, going around in circles with the 5 big booms, and that wraps up part 2. Now comes the third act, and boy, beyond this point I felt a little bit bored. I mean, it sure is interesting, and from a lore standpoint of the tribe, I genuinely like it. But in the pursuit of knowing more about Kinich, yeah, no, the ship is at the bottom of the ocean for that one. Anyways, we start off by learning that Trinidad is planning to purge the abyssal energy from Kongamato, which could very much kill him in the process. Naturally, Chief Wayner is not on board with that idea. After all, Kongamato isn't just some dangerous relic, he's a living part of the tribe's history and identity. Then Kinich pulls us aside, and this is where we finally learn something new about him. He's not just a Saurian hunter, he's also an Abyss hunter. Wowee, Kinich is now officially a certified baddie. What the hell am I saying in my script? So while chasing down those purple HP-sucking annoying demon dogs, you know the ones, Kinich stumbles across something called Beastly Rifts, and these are basically hidden spaces or liminal pockets where abyssal creatures can hide undetected. And this sparks an idea. Instead of killing Kongamato by forcibly removing the abyssal energy, why don't we just move him into one of these rifts? That way he's contained, still alive, and no longer a threat to anyone. Honestly, pretty smart. On the way back, we ran into Thiago and Ponche, great guys by the way. They help us uncover a ruin with a mural that shows a human and a Saurian standing together. We fight some bad guys, standard Genshin quest protocol that takes like 5 minutes to do, and takes a picture for archival reason. Or for the gram, who knows? Then Ponche gets robbed by a treasure hoarder named Matthias, who steals a book with more lore in it. And for the sake of convenience and pushing the story forward, Matthias fucking tosses the book away. Probably because he realized that Genshin still hasn't added a skip button to push through the dialogues. Back in the Cave Boys storyline, Sanka somehow finds the book and starts reading it. This catches Ahau's attention, specifically the part that says all bearers of the Turnfire name are fated to die. Cue the next day. So the next day rolls around and Kinich comes up to us like, hey bro, I gotta show you something real quick. And boom! He activates a beastly rift right then and there. And who pops out of the void? It's Enjo, my beloved. Yup. Our favorite cryptic Pyro Abyss Lector casually emerging from the abyss so randomly. He drops the big reveal. Ahau struck a deal with him. Apparently in exchange for allowing Enjo to do some historical research because he's out here trying to find the Mare Javari, as usual, Ahau agreed to let him open up a beastly rift near the Science's territory. And that actually lines up perfectly with Kenich's plan. You know, the whole let's not kill the giant ancient Saurian and instead tuck him away in a metaphysical abyssal backroom where he can't hurt anyone plan. Finally, we arrive at the last part of the quest. The Turnfire ritual begins and everything plays out pretty much as expected. We follow the tribe's instructions, perform the ceremonial tasks, and of course, Kinich is right there with us, walking through it step by step. And then we finally reach Kongamato's domain, and this is where things start popping off. Kinich whips out the Beastly Rift device, ready to put his plan into action, and of course, everyone collectively starts losing their shit. The tribe is in full panic mode, so while Chief Wayner and Kinich are flailing back and forth mid-argument, Trinidad straight up breaks the Rift device, and that, of course, wakes up Kongamato. Everyone else immediately yeets out of there like it's a final circle in a battle royale, except for us and Kinich. And then, Kinich activates his Ben 10 powers! Okay, not literally, but he does awaken his ancient name, which gives him this aura of ancient authority. That's when Kongamato recognizes him, and this is where things actually get emotional. Kongamato, full of guilt and corruption, begs Kinich to end his life, and Kinich, cold, steady, and emotionally guarded, refuses. Instead, he tells Kongamato that he has to live with the shame of his past, and that line hits. Because in that moment, Kinich doesn't go for mercy or vengeance. He goes for atonement, and ultimately Kongamato agrees, asking Kinich to use his ruined vessel to help train future heroes, until the abyss is wiped from Natlan completely. A day later, we return to the tribe to check in with Wayner and the rest of the gang, to see how they're doing after, you know, almost blowing up the entire tribe with that whole debacle from yesterday. Along the way, we come across Kinich again. He gives us an update on Kongamato's condition and genuinely thanks for our help. And then of course we wrap up with the one and only Enjo, who morphed back into an uncle. What? He apologizes to Huni and Toba for all the chaos and then casually reveals that he got hit in the head by something that fell from the sky, and that's how he learned about bungee jumping? Like, what is this man on? Anyway, the most important part, whatever fell from the sky, Enjo treated it, and it turns out that thing was actually Nana, the mother of the 3 Saurian children. She's safe and back. The lore surrounding the science of the canopy was rich and engaging. It follows the same structure we saw in the previous Chronicles Quest for the people of the Springs, and the formula here works. But this is where it becomes problematic for me, specifically in relation to Kinich, is that once again, we gain absolutely nothing new about him. Yes, we uncover tons of lore about Burkina, Kongamato, the entire Turnfire ritual, and even get a few new crumbs about Enjo of all people. But when it comes to Kinich, who is literally the poster child on the screen when you complete the quest, we walk away with nothing. No deeper understanding, no character-defining moment, just whatever Kinich normally gets up from time to time again. When you compare this to Moalani's Chronicles Quest, the difference is stark. Her quest gave her space to grow emotionally and narratively. We saw her joyful personality tested. We witnessed her frustration with Varamdra, her doubts, her strength, her vulnerabilities. It felt like we were finally seeing her in full color, beyond the surface level happy-go-lucky side. And no, this isn't me being biased towards Moalani over Kinich. I like both of them. I wanted to like Kinich even more, but the issue here lies in its execution. It's the way the story beats were structured and how the character was integrated into the plot that makes Moalani's Chronicle shine in comparison. In Kinich's case, this entire Chronicle quest makes him feel like an outsider in his own tribe story. And sure, that can be chalked up to him asking for the prize of being the flame bearer of the Turnfire ceremony, which made Trinidad angry and set him outside the picture. This quest didn't do his character justice, and that's honestly a shame, because compared to Moalani, her personality and worldview was tested, whereas Kinich didn't even have to deal with any of that. What frustrates me as well is that he has a very touching backstory if you read through his story mark on the character menu, which I'll now be summarizing for you. Kinich's early life was marked by instability and abuse. His father, a courier and gambler, oscillated between affection and violence, while his mother bore the weight of the family's survival. After being forced to relocate to the mountains, Kinich learned key survival skills. When his mother fled and his father later died in an accident, Kinich, just 7, was left to live alone, relying entirely on himself for survival. Living at the mountain's edge, Kinich developed a solitary self-sufficient lifestyle. He farmed, hunted, and traded in the market but remained distant from the tribe, distrusting offers of help as potential traps. Eldeleic, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, aware of Kinich's background, eventually convinced him to attend school in exchange for messenger work. Though he only stayed for a day, Kinich quickly saw through the idealism of hero worship. His takeaway was simple: if heroism was to mean anything, it should be for a reward, namely, Mora. Determined to become strong, Kinich later asked Eldeleic for guidance, offering all his possessions in return. Leic declined payment but agreed to mentor him. Over several years, Kinich studied under various specialists and trained himself physically by mimicking wild animals. He took on tribal duties, and over time, more dangerous missions. Though his methods and attitude quickly drew criticism, Kinich remained focused and results in fair compensation, showing early signs of a transactional and calculated worldview. This approach extended into his most unusual alliance with Kahula, a dangerous ancient being sealed in a relic. Kinich met Ahau during an expedition into Draconic ruins. Recognizing the power the entity held, he negotiated a contract. Ahau would lend him strength under set terms, and in return, Kinich would give Ahau his body after death. Despite Ahau's manipulative nature, Kinich managed the relationship pragmatically, understanding the risk but valuing the utility. Throughout his journey, Kinich's development is shaped by harsh realities rather than idealism. While he gains strength, skills, and influence, his core remains unchanged. He is not a traditional hero, but one defined by autonomy, self-reliance, and carefully weighed decisions. This entire backstory is buried in the character menu. Like, if you're not some deep dive lore enthusiast, you're never gonna read this. I didn't even read it until I started writing this script. If even just a glimpse of that backstory had made it into the Tribal Chronicles, or god forbid, his own arc in the Natlan Archon Quest, it would have added so much weight to his character. It could have made Kinich truly memorable, layered with emotional depth, and a story that just hit as hard as everyone else's. The biggest flaw that I've noticed in Kinich's character is that there's no room for him to grow. The way his story is structured gives us no sense of doubt, no internal conflict, no moments of self-hatred, or even a brief misstep to show that he's human. It's kind of like what we see with characters like Malvika or Zhongli. And hey, that's a whole other can of worms. This video is long enough already. Characters like these feel complete from the get-go, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But from a narrative standpoint, you need to let us, the players, walk the same path they did. Let us see the wounds that shaped them. Let us sit with their regrets, their fears, their shame, because even if a character is perfect now, they should never be shielded from feeling pain, or uncertainty, or unworthiness. That's what makes character real to us. That's why people love Navia, Xiao, Kaveh, Farina, and so many others, because we saw them fall apart. We watch them doubt themselves, make mistakes, cry, lash out, break down, and then grow from it. They're not loved because they're flawless, they're loved because they're human, because we see a little bit of ourselves in them. And until Kinich is given that same narrative space, that same emotional lens, he's just going to keep standing in the background of everyone else's story. And the funny thing is, the only time we get a glimpse of Kinich's past is behind a limited time event, which is crazy, like hello? For those people who play through the Whirling Waltz event, at the very end where we get to capture Angolvant, I don't know how to pronounce his name, we get the infamous piece that's kinda been memed in the community about Kinich hating gamblers.
Still, I suppose there's no point hiding it from you. To put it plainly, I can't stand gamblers. They're the most irresponsible people in the entire world. No respect for the principle that you have to give in order to get. They'll tell 1,000 lies for a single coin, deluding themselves into thinking they can use it to gamble their way to a vast fortune. But we all know that even when it looks like you're getting something for free, there's always an unseen cost. In the past, I also ended up paying a price for my father's gambling losses. I don't want anyone else to end up in a similar situation if I can help it. Don't feel sorry for me. I certainly don't feel sorry for myself. They say that people are shaped by their past, and since I've made it this far, I must have done a lot of things right. We should never punish ourselves for the mistakes of others. Instead, I choose to remember the moments that helped me grow. Like when I first learned to use a grappling hook, or the very first time I yearned for knowledge. Yeah, I believe you.
We get this entire thing slapped at us at the very end, with some very nice artwork of baby Kinich as well. If this was expanded upon its own thing, we would have gotten a much better understanding of Kinich as a whole. Now that I've tackled the Chronicles Quest, I want to cross-check Kinich's personality and demeanor. After all, his type of personality reminds me of a character in Fontaine that executed this kind perfectly. His entire personality, the whole reserved, logical, quietly intense thing, is actually pretty similar to Lynette. And I've thought about this. I'd go so far as to say that the Natlan trio draws a lot of parallels with the Fontaine trio. And if you don't see it yet, don't worry, allow me to spell it out for you. Moalani is a very hyperactive character, full of life, bubbling energy, and she's basically the Archon of serotonin. She loves the spotlight and is surprisingly charismatic. Do you know who else share the same traits? Well, it's none other than Linny. He is a charismatic magician of the siblings, and much like Moalani, he tries to make things better by putting on a show, or hyping the traveler, or the gang up when something goes wrong. Kachina is a shy, reserved, and overly polite character. She's full of self-doubt and tends to underestimate herself a lot. From the very beginning of the Natlan Archon Quest to even hosting her in my Serenity Pot. Like, bro, it's fine, it's your house too, you can do whatever you want. She draws in the same traits as Fremine. The only thing that sets these two apart is that Kachina is more extroverted than Fremine. Fremine is more socially reclusive and prefers to be alone and hates being in the spotlight. But both of them possess the core characteristic of being the shy person of the group. Lastly, we have Kinich, who is the cold, self-contained person in the Natlan trio, which is nearly the same as Lynette's entire personality trait. They both only talk when they have to, like Kinich usually letting a How do the talking, and Lynette switching to chat mode, standby mode, etc. The only thing that sets both of these characters apart is the execution in terms of showcasing the depth of their character development. I'm not going to rehash the same points I've already made about Kinich. Instead, I'm just going to talk about what made Lynette's character development and her narrative arc feel so much more engaging, cohesive, and well executed by comparison. Right from the beginning of the Fontaine Archon Quest, Linny and Lynette are front and center. They're the main driving forces for the first half of the questline. Even though Lynette didn't have as many lines as Linny, and she was often in the background, she was still present. She was always doing something, whether it was gathering intel, stepping in to assist the House of the Hearth, or simply being there as things unfolded. Compare that to Kinich. He's completely absent during one of Natlan's most pivotal moments, like when Kachina was trapped in the Night Kingdom cause the Wyob, the Children of the Echoes, got corrupted by the Abyss, an emotionally loaded sequence that involved rescuing her. And yet Kinich was nowhere. He wasn't even present during this tense period for one of his closest friends. Second, Lynette's story quest gave us something Kinich's story severely lacked, which is space. We got an opportunity to explore who she is, what she feels, and what her interests are. At first glance, I honestly thought Lynette was going to be a flat linear character, just the quiet one with not much going on. But as her story unfolded, we got to see her awkwardness, her dry humor, her insecurities, fears, and even the terrifying side of her when we get to the part of saving the cats. She became well-rounded and, most importantly, relatable. And then there's Lyney's story quest, which expands even further on their shared history. We learn about their childhood, how Lyney was separated from his sister, and how Lynette was unfortunately caught in an underground human trafficking operation before being rescued by father. It's a dark, emotionally heavy backstory, but it added tremendous depth to both of them. Both Kinich and Lynette have gone through something horrible in their pasts, experiences that shaped them into the quiet, guarded characters we see today. But what truly sets them apart is the execution and the narrative approach used to tell their stories. With Lynette, we're given space to explore her silence, not just as a trait, but as something tied to trauma, survival, and emotional growth. We witness her discomfort, her trust issues, her quiet strength, and how she slowly opens up to us. And that growth doesn't always need to be loud to be powerful. On the other hand, Kinich's silence feels more like a walled in an open window. We're told he has a difficult past, that he's cold and efficient, but we're rarely shown what it truly means for him as a person, aside from the writings in his character menu. There's no emotional arc, no real introspection, and very little payoff. So when you compare the two, Lynette's quietness speaks volumes, while Kinich's just ends up feeling hollow. I don't think Kinich counts as a bad character, because deep down, despite the lapses in the execution of his character and the lack of a strong narrative to propel him forward, I still like him. I think he's a cool character, one who synergizes well with the personality of both Kachina and Mualani, and even with other characters as well, like in the Whirling Waltz event or Aoife's limited time event. Sure, he doesn't have much to say, but it's through his silence that you begin to understand how he feels about a certain situation. He's a cold, calculated person who considers the cost of everything and every action that he takes. That might be off-putting to some people, but to him, that's his worldview, the essence of having Malipo as his ancient name. I did this deep dive analysis into his character writing because I have a strong admiration for Kinich. Going through such a terrible childhood and having to grow up all on your own after the fallout of your parents is something my heart could never fathom. He's a complex guy, that's for sure. And I made this video in hopes of understanding him better, because he's one of my all-time favorite characters in the game. I felt a bit underwhelmed with how his character development was handled. But hopefully in the future, whether through a limited time event or another Natlan quest, we'll get a chance to learn more about Kinich. And just as he was once curious about how a grappling hook worked, maybe we too are simply trying to find a way to latch onto him, to pull ourselves closer to a character who, despite his silence, has so much more to say. Thank you so much for watching.